I'm going to be who I am. I'm comfortable with who I am.
Hijab traditionally refers to the kind of dressing that a Muslim, and particularly a Muslim woman, is expected to have. In some societies, hijab just refers to the headscarf. But among Muslim jurists, it refers to the full dressing of the woman in particular. Islam is a way of life and prescribes certain minimum dressing that is considered based on its standards of modesty, but at the same time accommodates cultural adaptations. So both men and women have a minimum amount of dressing that is considered appropriate for their biological natures. And so, for example, for men, they are expected to cover everything between the navel and the knee. For women, they are expected to cover everything except the face, the hands, and the feet. And here we find differences of opinions among scholars. Most scholars consider that because the Prophet, peace be upon him, said a woman in 3 hadith actually, that a woman who has reached the age of puberty should cover everything except face, hands, and he pointed to his face and pointed to his hands. They consider that the face and the hands are not necessarily part of the aura. In other words, those parts that need to be covered. And there are 3 hadith on this. One of them is called the Mursal hadith, the hadith of Asma, as a broken chain, but other scholars point to other authentic chains narrated by Aisha and Qatada to the fact that the face and the hands are not part of what is the aura, while others feel no, the face and hands should be covered because of a position held by a companion, Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Others, however, feel that the position Aisha is more authentic, which even considers the feet as not being part of the aura. Some tabi'un, such as Sayyid bin al-Musayyib, some jurists such as Imam al-Tabari, were also of the opinion that the covering of the hair was encouraged, but not a compulsory part of the hadith. So scholars have differed regarding what was compulsory and what was encouraged to be covered. But there was a general consensus that the face, hands, and feet were not essential parts of the aura, that your prayer was accepted if you exposed these parts. The moral teachings of Islam regarding these were not considered as legal offenses. At the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, there were no punishments that were prescribed for not dressing appropriately. It was regarded as an individual's responsibility to be God conscious and dress appropriately. The Quran and the Sunnah, because the subject area of dressing falls under mu'amalat, everything is permissible except what is prohibited, and therefore allowed people to come up with their own designs and colors that were suited to their own cultural context. The Prophet did not prescribe a particular color for dressing. Scholars have felt that a dressing of a woman should be more bland in color, or some recommended gray. A lot of these were tied to the assumptions of certain scholars regarding what they felt was better, according to their own cultural context. But what you have at the time of the Prophet is even somebody dressing with flowers in his dressing, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, described that as more appropriate for women. So when we come clearly to the Prophet ﷺ statement or the Quran, there's no prescribed style of dressing. There was the jilbab that women wore, just as there were various forms of dressing that the men wore. And these were cultural dresses, but nothing from the point of view of the jurists prohibited women from covering their hijab, or men covering their aura, according to their cultural requirements, so long as they respected the minimum dress code that Sharia required. When it came to the question of appearing, therefore, in public, what is most important is that there is modesty in dressing, modesty in behavior, and every society has had some kind of a written or unwritten dress code. The exposure of certain parts of the body in every society has been considered indecent, or some consider it part of indecent exposure. And when one looks at the position jurists or Muslim scholars have taken, when it comes to what is the minimum dress that a man or a woman should have, it has always been to err on the side of being conservative, to cover more instead of covering less. When it comes to men, men ideally should dress and cover their shoulders, in other words, even for prayer. While it may be just from the navel to the knee that is compulsory, they are encouraged to cover more. But because of the kind of professions that men would sometimes be involved in, the minimum probably is less for men for those reasons. For the subject area of dressing as a whole, a person should not, as unfortunately we find with some Muslims today, regard dressing as the only criteria or the criteria for judging the goodness of a person. You have a lot of people who may make mistakes in one place, be ignorant or not strong enough to practice one particular teaching of Islam, but stronger than others in other parts of the Islamic teachings. We should not look down upon people who are not dressing as appropriately as we would feel they should dress. We should let Allah judge, while at the same time, if we feel something is wrong, we should approach people in the best manner as prescribed by the Quran and the Sunnah, but to be very careful about being judgmental or making it another pillar of Islam, as if there are no topics more important than the subject of covering the hair in particular. So generally, the objective in the point from the perspective of most scholars is dressing is an expression of modesty in our behavior, in our dressing, just as we should be modest in the way we speak and how we present ourselves in public. But regarding the motivation for why women dress or why men should dress according to Sharia, it should be part and parcel of their submission to the will of Allah, as should be the compliance with any of the injunctions of Sharia. And Allah.
I'm gonna be who I am. I'm comfortable with who I am. I don't have to fake it and try to be someone I'm not. You know? And especially to the girls, I'm telling you, and I'm done with this talk, but the younger girls in the audience and the young sisters that I have, one of the crises that we have in the US, and I think it's all over the world, is self-esteem for Muslim women. Self-esteem for Muslim women. You know, you have non-Muslims that can dress however they want, and we have restrictions on how you can dress. And you feel like, well, I have to look ugly and they get to look so beautiful. And some girls feel that way. And why do I have to wear this thing? You know? Or why am I so short? And why am I so fat? Or why am I so skinny? Or why am I so this? Or why are my eyes so far apart? Why is my nose so big? Why are my teeth not aligned? Why? You're so overly conscious of yourself. Why is there this dot on my cheek over here? If you stretch it so much, you might see it. Oh, it's so ugly. And you're like looking at it for 35 minutes in the mirror. You know, you have to find comfort with yourself. You have to be comfortable with who you are. This is really important, you know, and don't wish for what somebody has. وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَا وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. So beautiful. Don't wish for what other people have. I wish I was as tall as this one. I wish I was as wealthy as that one. I wish I had those clothes. I wish I looked like that. I wish. No, actually Allah made you awesome. That's it. It's good enough. And the parents that are in the audience, it is your absolute responsibility, especially to your daughters, to compliment them. It's not wrong of you to tell them they're beautiful. You should tell them they're beautiful. Because if they don't hear that from you, they're going to look to hear that from somebody else. Dummy. Do it yourself. You have to do that, you know. Our girls have low self-esteem because nobody validates them. Nobody tells, especially the fathers, especially, not the mothers. Mothers love anyway, you know. The fathers, you have to go out of your way to compliment your daughters. And stop having the attitude that nothing they do is good enough. Stop talking down to them. It's killing them. It's killing them. In our deen, we always talk about the rights of the parents, and they have rights, but they have responsibilities too. You know, this is why they'll end up in bad kinds of relationships if we don't do that.
It's quite common to see here in Malaysia people coming from the Gulf. You'll see the guy walking in short shorts with dark glasses, his hair this way, and tight t-shirt, and on his hand he's got a woman covered up. Boom! You can't even see her eyes. She's walking, and there he is walking. So it's not surprising for them to say, "Hey, what's happening here? Where's the fairness?" Right? That is a part of ignorance, because there are dress requirements for men also. But Muslim men today don't follow them. That is the reality. Most Muslim men today don't follow Islamic dress requirements. How do I say that? Why am I saying that? Well, most men today, we know, the awrah is between the navel and the knee. Not the navel, not the knee, but what is between the navel and the knee. Now, men wear pants. And I'm not talking about Turkish pants, where the crotch is down by your ankles, or shalwar of the Pakistanis. Waist is like this big, you put it together, huge. We're talking about Western pants. Western pants. Where the philosophy of fashion in the West is, if you have it, flaunt it. What does that mean? If you look good, let everybody know you look good. That is the philosophy of Western fashion. Meaning that the goal in making pants is to expose the awrah. That is the number one goal. When they make pants, the number one goal is to expose the awrah. So it is cut in certain way and stitched in certain way that your behind is hugged by the pant, your thighs are hugged by the pants, your awrah, if you bend over, if you come into the masjid late, people are in sujood, a'udhu billah. You can't look ahead of yourself, otherwise you'll be looking at men's private parts. A'udhu billah. And we know one of the conditions for the acceptability of salah is what? Satrul awrah. But we're coming and praying in these pants. Now, in general, in the Muslim world, if a man, he's a practicing Muslim, if his wife wants to wear a spandex outfit, like those people who are skaters, racing skaters, they have an outfit which is like somebody sprayed on them color, right? Now, if your wife wants to come out wearing that, she's got a hijab on her head like this, you're going to say, "Hey, astaghfirullah, get in there and put on some clothes. Loose, covering the awrah." But what about you? What about you? We have a double standard. It's okay for men to expose their awrah, but not for women. So that goes back to ignorance.